How are we doing? Ready to roll? Yes, no?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, so quick intro. This is our monthly DevOps meetup. This is both IntelliTect Lunch and Learn as well as Spokane DevOps meetup meeting. We've been doing these virtually at lunchtime for a while now. That seems to work out best versus our evening sessions. Maybe someday we'll start evening sessions again. I don't know. I've gotten kind of used to lunchtime, so I'm good with that. We have a couple of other meetups, Spokane Python User Group. They meet monthly as well as occasionally for coffee. They do meet in the evenings and they meet here. That's open for people to come out. And Spokane.net Users Group, we haven't had a meeting in a while. I'm not sure when the next. We're having one around the next .NET conference that's coming up in a month or so. I think it's November. .NET focused around .NET 8. IntelliTect is a leader in software architecture, software design, software development. We do a lot of custom software development. Most of the team is focused on that, but for each one of our projects, we also do a lot of DevOps. We're a GitHub partner, a Microsoft partner, also an AWS partner. As part of that work, we find ourselves doing deployments, structure as code, related DevOps activities to Azure, AWS, using GitHub, Azure DevOps, as well as others, including GitLab, Jira, and et cetera, et cetera. In fact, John is having fun right now integrating Jira and Azure DevOps with an Azure function.
Yeah.
Yippee. It's fun,
It's
right?
fun.
You have a great time. You're having a great time. All right, cool. Follow us on the socials. Most of our meetup recordings, if we don't screw them up too badly, will get posted to YouTube eventually. So if you're looking for something, you don't see it, don't hesitate to reach out. Hit us up either on the meetup or whatever to remind us to go ahead and post a recording to YouTube if you find it valuable, and hopefully you do. Okay, and with no further ado, we'll start talking about GitHub Rulesets. So GitHub Rulesets. I'm Phil, CTO of IntelliTect. For those who don't know me, for those who do, no introduction is needed. So good enough. All right, Rulesets. So what we're going to cover is what they are, why they are. Rulesets is actually come out fairly recently and fairly quickly. It was generally available as a beta earlier this year, I think April timeframe, and then actually made generally available in the July timeframe. So it's less than a year old, at least as far as public availability goes. And it's really about a new approach to protecting refs, and not just branches, but also tags, which is an interesting twist. Rule sets support layering, so we can have multiple rule sets at the same time. Works with existing branch policies. And really rule sets, if you look at them, they're pretty much branch policies, but better. And we'll talk about that a little bit. I would expect, this is an editorial comment from Phil. I don't know that I've explicitly read or heard this from anybody at GitHub. And if I did, I'd probably have to disavow that knowledge. But to my way of thinking, I would expect branch policies just not to be used going forward. There's nobody who said they're going away. You could still use them. They work, they're great, whatever. But I wouldn't expect them to be all that popular down the road with the way rule sets are implemented. Another key thing with rule sets, you can enable, disable, and they are visible to anyone with read access to a repo. So you don't have to have special access. You can see what's going on and why something you're trying to do in GitHub might fail. My experience has been that the error messages are pretty good. But it's also good to know what rules you're going to need to follow when you push something to a repo. So which are expected as a dev is pushing to a repo. That's a pretty quick high-level overview. Hopefully that makes sense. If something doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to stop, ask questions, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a couple of features that are GitHub Enterprise Cloud specific. So the upsell, the upcharge, which are pretty cool features. So you can have rule sets at the organization level. Branch policies apply specifically to a single branch. There are approaches to applying branch policies to more than a branch, and Jenny's grinning because she's gone through the wonderful pleasure it is to set up safe settings, which is a GitHub repo maintained by GitHub for doing additional things like applying rules to more than one repo at a time and maintaining, alignment, let's say, on rules. So if somebody messes up a branch policy, safe settings will go in and correct it for you. Thank you very much. It's fidgety, let's put it that way. Rule sets you can actually set at the organization level. And if you think about the fact that they're layered, I can set a rule, let's say, force linear commits at the organization level across all repos. And then as it makes sense, at an individual repo, add and extend rules, and they'll all work together. There's also some metadata rules. There are different ways to do metadata, and this would be like comments. Our comments following a specific format. With the organization, you can actually evaluate ahead of applying, and we'll demo some of this in a minute here. And something that just was released in the last couple of days in beta form. There's a feature that that GitHub. So you could in a repo say, for release, this particular workflow must run. Whatever that workflow is, typical scenario might be a security scan. So I want every push to always, you must run this required workflow. Or it might be some other audit type settings that you want to make sure that every push to a particular branch runs this workflow. The way GitHub implemented this, they were sort of doing that. They did this before rule sets at least were available. Once rule sets became available, they switched how they were doing required workflows, and they integrated that into rule sets. But again, it's a beta feature now. I don't necessarily have a demo for it, but we'll see it. And again, this is part of GitHub Enterprise Cloud. So getting people to upgrade and pay $20 a month per user, or whatever you can negotiate with GitHub. And again, that's a pretty powerful feature for organizations. So how do you get it? Rule sets are free in public repos, and in private repos, you need either Pro, Team, or Enterprise Cloud. Now, that's just rule sets generally in private repos. These features I talked about that are Enterprise Cloud specific, they're Enterprise Cloud specific, and they're going to apply to a private, internal, or public repo that you have within GitHub Enterprise Cloud. Those are the three types of repos you can have. Internal, for those of you who don't know, are public within an organization, a GitHub organization, and that's supported by GitHub Enterprise. So far, so good. Everybody with me? Yeah. Rock and rolling. All right, so let's do a couple of demos, just to show what it is, show what it looks like. I've got a private or a public repo in my personal org, Phil Spokas. And it's a pretty simple repo. There isn't really much to it. If I go to settings, I can go to rules and see rule sets. I actually have the rule set there already, but we'll see rule sets. I can define many of these. I've just got a simple rule called rule 1. I can modify its enforcement status in this public repo. I've got an active and a disabled, so I can either turn it on or turn it off. All right, so I don't want to use it anymore. I disable it. I want to use it. I enable it. I can add bypass rules. By default, there is no bypass. That's one of the differences with branch policies. By default, with branch policies, admins can bypass branch policies. With rule sets, by default, unless you explicitly say these folks can bypass, you're not going to get past it even if you're a repository admin or a maintainer. You can add a bypass rule based on roles that you've defined and based on apps, as well as something else that's escaping me at the moment, but we'll get to it. So if I have a GitHub app that I've defined, I can let it bypass. So if I'm doing some sort of integration with another product, I can get past it. Note, if you have an app, you can actually use that and authenticate any of your scripts or your APIs or whatever against that app. So it isn't exclusive to some third-party thing. You can actually, run scripts or workflows or whatever you want with the GitHub app. So that is a way another way to bypass that might come in handy. And see, in this particular repo, I've decided, just a demo, I'll let myself as an admin and or a maintainer to bypass the rule. I'm going to target release branches, and this is an fnmatch rule that if you're using GitHub and branch policies you're familiar with. This basically means any branch that starts with release and is nested down to any level is going to apply. This rule is going to apply to all of those. I could also include default branches, include all branches, and add patterns to these if I wanted to. If I wanted this to apply to more than just one branch, I could do that. Some of the branch protections, some of them are going to be new, some of them are going to be very familiar to you if you're familiar with GitHub branch protections. New ones are restricting, creating, updating, and deleting. So if I'm not a repo admin or a maintainer, I can't create a release / whatever branch. And I could also do things like require linear history, and again, this is similar to branch protection, or the same as branch protection. I'm sure, or would expect, that the code is the same under the covers. It's just how it gets invoked. Require signed commits. Typically, if you've got a public repo and you want to take commits from various parties, you'll want them signed. If you're in a protected organization where you've provisioned users, you're not typically going to use that. Require a pull request, and then pull request again has similar features or same features as branch protection. How many approvals do you want? Dismiss stale if a new commit is pushed. Code owners files, so you can have multiple different people approving a branch. Require approval of their most recent reviewable. So again, when there's you have other people, different people contributing. And again, if there's open conversations, make sure that they're all closed out or resolved before continuing. All right. So again, things that are very similar to branch protection. My assumption here is we're talking about rule sets, not about every individual these rules. Hopefully, these things are familiar to you. If not, we can probably go into them as time allows. And if we have status checks or workflow, action workflows that you want to pass. This is just a simple demo rule. I don't think I've got anything, no status checks that have actually that have run that are relevant. But again, this is similar to a branch protection policy. And again, block force pushes to relevant refs. So I want to go through a regular process when I'm committing to the release branch. He takes a breath. So far, so good. All right, so I'm going to go over to another browser I have over here, browser instance, and this is the infamous user, GitHub user. Come on, pop up there. Well, I'm going to have to go in here. Spokas G. Know him, love him. So it's another GitHub user that I've added to my Ruleset repo, and I've just navigated to this repo as Spokas G, and I take a look at it and I can see, hey, there's 7 branches here. There's some interesting stuff. I've got main, some patches, various things that I've been screwing around with, and we can see down here release/release1 has this little symbol on it, and it shows me that, hey, rule 1 is active, and here's what this rule does. It's targeted at release branches. I can't create, update, or delete. I'm going to block force pushes on this branch. And we can see here, I can't modify or rename the branch. And I can't delete the branch as Focus G. If I go back to myself as an admin, navigate to the code, I'm going to leave. I didn't intend to change anything there. I go to branches. I can see that, hey, I can actually modify the name of the branch if I wanted to, or I could delete it if I wanted to. Okay, so, simple stuff. And if I do a new branch and I say, hey, I want to create a new branch, release rel 2, create it off the main. Oh, no, can't do it. I'm violating rule set.
Oh, you took one.
What's that?
You took a one, real one.
Try again. Release.
Yeah, you had
Rel
a
2.
duplicate name.
I assumed what was going to happen. Funny how that works. So name restrictions. I'm not allowed to create rel 2. Okay. If I go back to me as my admin persona, I go to release /rel 2, create new branch, bang zoom, got it. Okay. So kind of cool, right? It's not just branch, it's a different form of branch detection. All right.
It's much better than safe settings.
It's much better than safe settings. It doesn't quite go as far as safe settings, but there's some really cool features, and in combination, especially if you think about required workflows. And again, we have customers who've been kind of pushing for that required workflow feature, but the way it was implemented initially was kind of clumsy. Being able to do this at an org level, of course, with GitHub Enterprise is kind of cool. So it's pretty easy to use. Seems very robust in my settings, and at least initially, I can't see a reason not to use this over branch protection. It's just easier, and I can also layer these. I can group them together, and we can probably try that. Flying along here, so we might have time. Okay, so far so good. Moving on to org. So we have an IntelliTect GitHub Enterprise account, courtesy of our partnership with GitHub. And I've defined a rule set here. This is a little bit different. So I am at the organization level, IntelliTect test, not at the repo level. And I'm looking at settings. So if I just say start at the org, go to overview, see all the repos that are in this org. Rules 1 is my sample repo that I set up, but these rules are going to apply across all these wonderful repos that we've used for testing. If I go to settings, I can navigate down to repository. I can see different things that I can set up for repositories, and I can click into the rule sets and go to a default rule set. And this is going to look very similar, not quite the same. I have this other option, which is evaluate, which I'm going to go ahead and set. At the enterprise level, I can set up these rules and put them in evaluation mode, and then see what activity across my repos would trigger this rule, right? So yeah, I mean, this is really right. Instead of I can get people upset proactively rather than reactively. Ideally, I can see all the stuff that's failing and then go, hey, everybody, guess what's going to happen to you when you try this again? Once I enable this rule or whatever. Bypass is similar. Again, I created a custom role, so it's going to apply to any roles that have write. I mean, obviously, if you're pushing to a repo, you're going to have to at least have write privilege. I created a custom role. Doesn't really matter what's in it, but that shows up here. And then teams, that's another thing. So I can say this team has access. That was the other thing I was forgetting in my private org. And then hey, if there's an app, safe settings, Jenny Curry, I think that is. Yeah, so there's an app that was set up in this repo, playing around and testing and configuring safe settings. So that's kind of cool. And again, by default, these rules are going to apply to me as an admin, to any maintainers, et cetera, unless I provide that bypass. So more secure by default. I'm going to target all repositories. And again, I can provide a list by name, or I can select repositories that I wanted to apply to. I wanted to apply to the default branches, for example. I might say, hey, don't allow people to delete the default branch. I don't think you can actually delete the default branch anyway. So you're not, GitHub's not going to allow you to do that. So that's kind of a silly rule. But if it was not the default branch, you could say, hey man, if it's like the main branch, or dev or release or something like that, a special name that you want to enforce or use across all your branches, you can prevent people from deleting that special branch. Again, require linear history. I said, hey man, I need pull requests before approving, and said all the usual things. I didn't say that I have approvals, however, but I did say require conversation resolution, which we'll get into in a little bit, and block force pushes. The other thing you'll see here is this beta, which you don't get in your public repo that's not enterprise. Require workflows to pass before merging. So again, I haven't set up a demo here, but I could say I've got a security scan, standard security scan workflow that can run against any repo. I want to set that up by default, and it has to pass before I'm going to allow merging into my default branch. Okay, that's one example. Or again, audit checks. Whatever those happen to be for a given organization. So again, this is a really powerful feature, easy to configure, easy to set up. And then there's also metadata restrictions. And again, just real quickly, if we have time, I'll add a second rule. But it can do things like, hey, add a commit message, or author email has to come from my domain or a set of domains. Committer email or branch name has to apply. Like, for example, I want to enforce that my dev branches start with a person's name /dev, or dev/person's name, or something like that. So I can set up a regular expression matching pattern that would ensure that my developers' branches are created appropriately. So it makes sense, fairly straightforward, fairly obvious. We run into this sort of thing all the time. Messy branches all over the place that nobody ever cleans up, but that's a separate issue. Delete your branches if you've merged them.
This feature in work management platforms, like does DevOps have a branch naming restriction?
So,
because I haven't seen this before. Any other?
There are, let's say, and again, that's an excellent question, and it's been a while since I've run through pull request policies. I've always thought of Azure DevOps pull request process to be more sophisticated than GitHub's. Now, it's probably fair to go back and do a feature comparison to see how they're doing, because obviously with some of these features, they're getting up there. For example, the way you do reviewers. And the number of reviewers and how you configure reviewers is a lot simpler. It has been a lot simpler in Azure DevOps. For example, you can do that in GitHub, but I got to set up a code owner's file, and it's got to be based on the path of where the commits affected, that the commits affect. If you know what I'm saying, like, so if I have an IAC folder for infrastructure as code, I might assign a team that's going to be responsible for reviewing that code. If I set up my code owner's file separate from the PR review process and protection policy, I can do that with GitHub. It's just a second separate step. With the required workflow, there are ways I can get away with doing that, let's say in an action, right? So I might be able to have, I can add there, a lot of actions in the marketplace. There are actions that would do that give you additional reviewer options. So I could add that in as a different way to do reviewers, or if I had cascading reviewers, I have person A to review it, then person B, then person C, or team A, then team B, then team C. I could set up a required workflow and then throw it in here. So I don't necessarily have a demo of that. Time did not allow, but there's some cool scenarios that you can imagine that you can start to implement with this plus, GitHub Action workflows. So I probably answered your question and maybe three more. I don't know. Sorry. There was another, I thought I heard somebody else asking a question online.
Yeah, I was curious in that other screen that you were looking at. I don't know if that was the workflow one. Does it have like you were going to compare like regular expressions against things? Does it the things that you can compare against? You said like a username. Does it have like a set of custom variables that you can or oh, it's just that the email? Okay, just that.
Yep.
Okay. That answers it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It remains to be seen. There are ways to implement like a commit message, an email, and et cetera, but that's typically done client side. With GitHub, where you can set, Git rules to validate that then has to be applied to all of your clients. Now, there's ways that you can actually put that into the repo itself to deploy the rule. Again, the actual name of that is escaping me, but I don't know if you're aware already. You can put little shell scripts into your Git client in the GitHub repo in the .git directory that will get invoked based on various actions, like commit actions or whatever. Validating your commit message. You can actually do that on the client side. So
Are they called hooks?
I'm sorry.
Hooks? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, hooks. Right. Thank you. The client side hooks. So this is a way that you could augment some of that stuff. The branch name, for example, would be a good one. Keeping branch names clean and not having to modify your repo, but setting it up at an enterprise level with a rule, right? It just takes away a lot of the work of trying to get something like that done. Okay, so the other cool thing here is we have repository. Oh, actually, let me save this.
Have you tried some of those? Is the error messages that you get pretty clear?
Let's see what we get. Let's see what happens. Let's try a few things. So this is a little bit of history of this simple demo that I set up. And you see in evaluation mode, this caused an evaluation failure. Didn't actually fail me, but I can see that didn't pass because I didn't do a pull request. So if I just try this again, and in fact, let's go ahead and go to client side. I'll code here, and I'll just make changes. Let's just do a quick git status. Am I on? I want to do a git checkout main. Switch to branch main, git status. So I'm going to go here and say update readme. I'll do my control enter, and then I've got a hotkey to push just to say we're going to put piping. And that should get me to main. Let's do a refresh here, and we can see updated readme, and in evaluation mode, we see that it fails. And again, I can see why it failed because, hey, there wasn't a pull request. Okay, so let's go back to the repository rule and say, oop, I'm going to change this to active. I like what it's doing. I'm going to go ahead and enforce this rule. We'll go back to the README, more changes, and I will do my control enter. I'll go over here or do more, and do control GP to push the change. And actually, that wasn't much of a demo. Let's see what happened. I think I was still in evaluation mode. Let's go back. Active, this time for sure. It's a demo. Even more changes. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Oh, can't push. Okay, so the client got back to me, and I can show the command output and then see what happened here. Repository rules. Check the repository rules using this link. If I navigate there, I'll see the rules. And again, I'm actually the admin user, so even though I'm the admin user on this repo, I still can't do this because I haven't bypassed myself. All right, so I have to follow these rules by default. So I get a nice message back, which is good deal, right? Okay. I think we're rocking and rolling here through the demos, so you guys aren't asking any questions, but this is fairly straightforward. I mean, you're familiar with branch protection rules. There isn't really a lot to it, right? But by the same token, pretty powerful. I wanted to just double check. I think you get the idea. There's obviously different scenarios here with the different branch protection rules, but they're the same as with rule sets. They're the same as branch protection. So let's try a metadata rule. So if I go to my infamous PowerPoint, I go to my demo, I'll just grab a regular expression because there's no way I'm going to try to type that in and remember it off the top of my head. I'm going to go ahead and do a new branch rule set, and we're going to call it the commit message rule. I mean, obviously, rule 1 is a horrible name. Commit message rule is probably better. If I spell it right. Let's do an evaluate to start with, and I'm going to go down to add a restriction and say matching pattern. So the commit message must start with this matching pattern. So I'm looking for, again, a better form of this would be something like, resolves. That might be going too far. And again, I'm not going to test my knowledge of resolves, updates, closes, whatever you can think of, language that you might want to put in here to make it more sophisticated, but I'm not going to put that in there. There's a chance that what I just put in is going to work. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and again, I can add more restrictions if I want them. I'll go ahead and create that, save my changes, leave it in eval mode, and then let's go back to make more changes here, and I'm going to have to actually. That reminds me what I need to add a target branches. Let's add. Let's see. What do I want to do here? Do I want to do all branches or the default branch? I've set a PR rule, so let's just say all branches. Maybe dangerous. Let's do that. Let's do include by pattern, and let's do dev star.
Are you in a particular repo or at the org level?
What's that?
Are you in a particular repo or at the org level?
I'm still at the org level. The repository level, let me go ahead and save these changes. And then if I go to the repository level, and I go to a particular rule, I can go to settings. I can add, and that might be a better demo, but the idea here is I can go into rule sets and I can add a rule that would only apply to this repo, right? So
I like that it's showing you the org level ones too, though.
Yeah, exactly. So because again, that org level rule is going to apply, and then any additional rules that I put on this repo are also going to apply. So they're gonna all work together. And again, it's a worst or most restrictive algorithm. So what GitHub interprets as the most restrictive of a set of rules is going to get implemented. So if I say one reviewer has to be, I need one reviewer to approve a pull request by default, and then I add a repo rule that is 3 reviewers, it's going to be 3 reviewers, not 1 reviewer. And that's going to be the same, same throughout any other rules that you apply. What it interprets as the most restrictive is what's going to be done. Okay, so if I go back to the org and just double check that I've got this set up correctly. Nope. Hello, losing myself here. Repository rule sets. I go to the commit message rule. Any branch that starts with dev star must have a matching commit message. So again, I think we're in good shape there. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now let me do a git status here. I know if I'm on, let's do a git checkout -b. Actually, let's just do checkout test. No, I'm just going to create a new branch. Let's do dev or test my change. Just for grins. All right, so I'm on branch test my change. I'm going to go back to the README, testing a change, and test my. I'll just leave it like that. All good. And push that. No problem. Let's say git checkout -b dev dash Phil change one or some such. Okay, so now change on dev branch. And if you say dev change, it is really good. Okay, let's go back to our eval here. Check out my repository rules.
Did you publish that branch?
Thank you. I did a GP, so I published the branch. Let's just double check. Let's go to the repositories, go to rules 1, look at branches, 4 branches. So, did I not publish? Working tree clean. Let's try that again. Testing, publish the branch. No, I did not, Jenny. Surprises me to say it, but clearly the case. Okay, so repository rule sets. Actually, repository rule insights, and I still get no fail. What? What did I do wrong? Evaluate, target branches, dev star. That should cover me, right?
Does that mean it has to, the branch name would have to contain dev?
Well,
Start
it would be
with
dev anything. Let's do add target.
Test.
Include by pattern. Let's do dev star. I may have my deal wrong here. Let's just try this. Add target. Let's do dev /star. Save the changes. All right, so I'm gonna do a git checkout -b and do dev slash Phil001. Okay, now we'll do another change on a different dev branch. And we'll say you will love this change. And then let's publish that branch. Go to a new tab here, fire this up, make sure I actually, okay, and pushes. Okay, awesome. So my commit message is right there. Let's go back to the rule sets, go to the insights. Still no fail. All right, I don't know, man. I give
What's the name of the branch?
dev slash. I'll have to do a little debugging here. Let me get through the rest of the content and close this thing up.
Yeah, that one definitely looks like it should have cost.
Message everybody. I would have expected that to fail. All right, I got some evaluation fails. We got some fails. Actual fails, why it failed. I can see it at an enterprise level. What's going on? Okay, let's just walk through this. We got rules. We can do bypass, branches, fnmatch. I need to read the documentation again, obviously. Rules, we reviewed pretty much all the rules. Org level rules, again, we're getting those, whatever, getting that back into our client. Metadata rules, thought I set it up correctly, not working, not sure why. Comparing and contrasting with branch policy, again, linear history, deployments, et cetera, the check marks indicates these are also branch protection rules. The new one there is require workflows. And that's, otherwise you pretty much have equal, certainly everything covered, or just about everything covered on the branch side is covered on the rule set side. I think there's lock branch, which is not supported with rule sets, at least directly. Again, what are the differences? Rule sets support layering. There's organizational level. Branch protections are repo only. You got this create, update, delete. There's a block versus allow, sort of different approach to the defaults. Otherwise, you can achieve the same result by checking a checkbox or unchecking a checkbox, or adding a bypass, or not adding a bypass. So that's some of the differences. Additional things that are happening are repository properties. So you can set up properties on a repository, then use those to further filter your rule sets or target your rule sets. You can imagine how those might be used. If it's let's say Terraform based, I might run this set of rules. If it's C# repos, I might run those sets of rules, something like that. Or if it's a security, non-security, you can imagine a lot of different ways that that organizations will use those things. The word is that all the features and functions of safe settings and the policy bot will be replaced by rule sets sometime in 2024. I'm not so sure, because safe settings, love it or hate it, it can do a lot of stuff, including custom rules. So I think, to my way of thinking, it probably depends on what they mean by having all the functionality replaced. At least those things that might be repository specific, or repo or branch protection specific, would be replaced by rule sets. So that's the intended future. And then workflow notes, I think I said all this stuff already. So good to go. Questions? Make sense? Thoughts? You believe me that rule sets are gonna take over?
And once they encompass all the rules of their older ones.
Yeah, I think they're there. I think they're there now. You know, I you know, kind of played around with it. I haven't done intense beating on it, but it looks like all of the features of branch protection are there today with one exception, which is the locking everything. If you could do, you could do another way. So I don't know how often that's, I've never seen anything that's done all of it.
Definitely not something that gets automated usually,
No,
like, oh, lock this branch or.
right,
Yeah.
right. Kind of weird that it's there. Wonder how often that actually gets used on the GitHub side, what their metrics look like for how many times people use that feature of branch protection.
It's probably like I know in the Essential C# book, how you have like version 2.0 or whatever, and then you just want to keep it and never touch it.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
But that'd be like, okay, this one branch, right, or these two branches, it wouldn't be all of them.
Right.
And you don't want anyone to change it, so yeah, I can definitely see that.
Okay, that's all I had. Still somehow almost to the 2 hours. So if any other questions, let me know, and theoretically, we'll post this to YouTube in some number of weeks, days.
Yeah, I gotta learn to take notes or take questions. I had questions as you were going through, but I didn't wanna be ready.
No, man, you gotta stop. Give me a chance to take a breath. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody.
Nice job.